What it do? It's your boy DJ Skandalous, your favorite DJ's favorite DJ, and we back. We got some more Tupac news in the tuck that we're going to dish out right now. Let's get it. So if you guys been living under a rock, Tupac news is always coming about every single month, every single week. There's always something new to discuss with the late, great Tupac Shakur. And this is no different with this Drake and Kendrick Lamar situation. If you guys haven't been catching up on hip hop the last couple months, you guys been missing out. There's been beef left and right between a lot of rappers that been mostly getting their pop off the last 10 years, 20 years. You know, Kendrick Lamar, J. Cole, Metro Boomin, Future. Well, you can't really consider Metro Boomin a rapper, but producer. He's always in the hip hop, spectrum here when we're giving this talk about hip hop news and articles and production and shit like that. So I consider him in that same realm. Anyways, it's been such a great time for hip hop because it's been very lackluster the last couple of years. It's been very much shifting towards just a catchy beat and shit like that. There's very little lyricism left within hip hop, which is very true with a lot of rappers, but there is some lyrical rappers that are still present, like J. Cole, Eminem, Nas. We see that. However, with like songs like from Drake, they're more geared towards the pop audience, and we see mixtures of R&B and hip hop now, which is kind of crazy. We've seen that with like Ja Rule and stuff in the 90s, and Tupac was also experimenting with that, but now it's just overkill. And it's really left hip hop in a state where it's not really about battle rapping anymore, like it was built upon. When you think of battle rapping, you probably think of 8 Mile Eminem movie, right? And it's not really about that. We see some rappers go at each other, like Pusha T dissing Drake a couple years ago. We see it with Quavo and Chris Brown now, an R&B singer, right? We've seen it with Tupac and Biggie way back, right? We've seen it with Eminem and Benzino. So there's a lot of these rappers that go at each other. We just haven't seen it more frequently the last couple of years. So I'm not the biggest Drake fan. I'm not the biggest Kendrick Lamar and J. Cole fan either. But it has been great for me as a hip hop stan, I guess you could say, to have rappers that are actually being competitive against one another. And this is actually a crazy situation where everybody thought, like, when Kendrick Lamar came out and started dissing J. Cole and Drake back, because there's been a lot of subliminals thrown at Kendrick Lamar over the last 10 years, everybody thought that Drake would just hide away and let J. Cole do all the heavy lifting. And that's not been the case at all, right? We've seen J. Cole drop some disses on first-person shooter. We've seen him come out with the 7-minute drill, and then he apologized, right? Which was kind of crazy because a lot of people say, oh, well, you can't consider yourself as a GOAT or call yourself the best alive if you're going to take shots and then you're going to apologize right before your op can really, come back at you. And really that is kind of considered like a bitch-made move, but J. Cole is not 25 years old like Tupac was in the 90s, right? He's more mature in the sense that he's older. He has more life experience, right? And he's learned from other rap rivalries in the past. Like, not every rapper wants to go down the route of Tupac and Biggie where they're not here no more, right? Or the people that profit off their hard work and labor are people that never met them, right? So I can understand from that sense that J. Cole does not want to go and make this a situation where it's out of hand, but like not to give Kendrick Lamar the common courtesy and respect to reply is kind of like I said, a bitch may move. But that's not really the topic of today's discussion. But you got to break this down to get to the whole Drake situation with Kendrick Lamar involving Tupac. So J. Cole didn't really do his due diligence in the hip hop game. You're going to talk shit, but then you're not going to allow the other rapper to reply. We actually had Drake get in his own bag and do his own diss. And when he dropped his diss record, push-ups, a lot of people were like saying, oh, this is AI. And this is the problem with AI these days. The technology of AI has been so far advanced the last year, right? And it's still increasing. It's harder and harder for people to tell what's real and what's not. We never thought we'll get to the age of where you can just take someone's vocals and it can just mask an entire song, and you can have that person's song and another person's voice. 10 years ago, we actually had to go in and we had to chop up each word. We had to chop up when he said where and what and now and then and that. we had to mix and match words from different songs to make an artist say something new, right? Now we could just have AI come in, clone your voice, and overlap it of an existing song, which is pretty damn amazing and has beautiful technology for like movies and doing voiceovers, right? That's beautiful technology if you want to do a biopic on yourself and you want the actual person's real voice, like Elvis Presley or Michael Jackson. You want them to sound authentic. You use AI. You bring back any dead actor or musician in a movie or a song. I get that. But the problem with the music is then with the music, if you're using AI, it's not really their likeness per se, because you are using their image and their vocal quality and their tone, but it's not their lyrics. It's not their pen game. So we're going to break this down a little bit more. I found an article on Time where it actually breaks down the whole situation regarding Tupac. And I know we're kind of getting like 6 minutes into this or whatever it is when I cut this up. But this article that's been going on Time, I just want to break it down because there's a lot of confusion on whether or not you can sue for someone using your voice in AI. And I'll give you my thoughts on that later on. So another little mini breakdown. Drake released his diss track towards Kendrick Lamar after Kendrick Lamar took shots against Drake and J. Cole on the Like That remix. So Drake did his whole release, right? And it came out on the internet before it actually went to streaming services and YouTube. A lot of people said, oh, this is AI. This is not really Drake. And this is what's crazy about AI is that people have been making all these fake songs, whether it's Tupac, whether it's Drake, whether it's Kendrick Lamar. And it's so hard to actually tell whether they're real or not, because what ends up happening is you have a rapper or a musician, right? They'll record their own lyrics and their own vocals for a track, and then they'll use the AI to clone Drake or Kendrick Lamar or Tupac's voice, and they'll put it over top. Usually it might not come out good, but then there's weird instances where you might have someone that sounds similar to those artists or very much different, but when they clone it, it sounds almost perfect. Like there's D.O.P. Funk. He puts out the best Tupac AI tracks. He sounds nothing like Tupac, right? He sounds way more like Nate Dogg when he does the chorus, right? He's always been known for having Nate Dogg-like choruses on his tracks. He's from a different country. He's from Europe. He has an accent, right? But when he does the AI transformation, he sounds more like Tupac than everyone else that's an American rapper trying to rap like Tupac and use the AI. It's for whatever reason, the voice tone just meshes well together after they do the whole transformation. And with Drake and Kanye, it's easier to fake, right? So when they had this track come out, a lot of people were saying, oh, it's AI. And I was thinking to myself, man, this might be just a cop-out, right? Maybe this is just a way for Drake to test the waters of whether or not he gets good feedback for this diss record, right? And then he can actually do a redo. So my thinking was maybe like, oh, he releases it. He doesn't do it through the proper channels of an official release or YouTube and stuff like that. Then if it comes back that people don't like it, he can just not claim it as a real song and people can just believe it's AI. Then he can release another track. So that's where it kind of gets like iffy with the whole rap battle game and beef, that you can just have somebody claim it's AI and they get a redo. And it's not really a fair one-on-one shot between tracks, if you know what I'm saying. So when that leaked, a lot of people were thinking, okay, maybe it's AI. Some other people were thinking, maybe Drake is doing this because he doesn't want to claim it if it's going to get a bad rap. But then we end up seeing it go on streaming services. We didn't hear a reply from Kendrick Lamar. And then we got the AI track of Tupac, AI Snoop Dogg, which is kind of crazy because Snoop Dogg is still alive. Why would you use a live rapper that can call you out on this shit and not use a rapper like Eazy-E or someone else that's not here to really combat you on that? So this is where we're at. We're at 2 Drake disses against Kendrick Lamar. No response from Kendrick Lamar. And then they had Tupac open the track for Drake's track, Taylor Made Freestyle, which you can obviously tell is Tupac's cloned voice, but it's still in a way of Drake's voice. You can still hear Drake's voice a little bit through it. The flow is definitely Drake, so you know it's Drake underneath. So we're going to get into this article right here on Time. Okay, so this Time magazine article says Drake almost found himself in legal trouble after he released a Kendrick Lamar diss track titled Taylor Made Freestyle with an AI-generated version of Tupac Shakur's voice earlier this month. On Thursday, the song was originally released on April 19th, but it was scrubbed from Drake's Instagram page and his X account which those were the only two platforms that it was released upon. An attorney for Tupac Shakur's estate, Howard King, sent Drake's team a cease and desist letter on Wednesday threatening legal action if the rapper, whose real name Aubrey Drake Graham, did not take down the track from all his public platforms. And this is a direct quote from Howard King from the Tupac estate. The state is deeply dismayed and disappointed by your unauthorized use of Tupac's voice and personality. The use of Tupac's AI vocals is a flagrant violation of Tupac's publicity and the state's legal rights, as well as the blatant abuse of the legacy of one of the greatest hip-hop artists of all time. He also noted that this would not be something that the estate would have given its approval to if Drake would have asked permission for. Also, Howard King and the estate also praised Kendrick Lamar, saying that Kendrick Lamar has been a great supporter of Tupac's legacy, both publicly and privately. And you can honestly tell that through this close relationship, they did not want anything to fracture that relationship. And they also didn't want that negative feedback come back on the Tupac estate by allowing something like this to actually be out there. And if they don't do anything about it, it will be deemed like a cosign of sorts in some regard. The article also says Taylor Made Freestyle was the second diss track aimed at Kendrick Lamar, which I already said, which was a response to Kendrick Lamar's diss on Like That with the Future and Metro Boomin, which that track was #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 last month. So let's get into my thoughts about this whole situation. I know it took us a long time to get here, but I just want to break down the whole situation and whether or not I feel like the Tupac estate has a case here to make Drake take this down. So they actually asked Drake to take it down within 24 hours, and Drake took about 18, 19 hours, very last minute for him to remove it from Instagram. And people said that Drake didn't have to take it down because there is no law citing that you can't use somebody's voice, right? Because the law has not been updated on this increasing technology, because this technology is practically almost in its infancy for the public, right? We don't know how long the government and everyone else has this technology, right? But we know ever since 2021, 22, 23, this technology has been ever expanding. We've seen it with some websites where you can just do a simple sentence, and now you can just do whole songs. You can do whole paragraphs. You can have even AI write stories for you and do art. This technology is getting so far advanced that the government has not been able to regulate it properly because they rather deal with a bunch of other bullshit instead of protecting people's rights and people's artistry and people's likeness. And this is going to become a problem even in the sphere of politics, because you're going to have people fake videos of politicians. And we just seen this on the news the other day, that there was this principal that was put on leave because one of his co-workers, I think maybe a health director or something like that, a part of the school, had a falling out with the principal, and the principal wasn't going to renew his contract. So then he created this fake clip using his voice of him dropping the N-bomb and talking about Jewish people in a bad light, right? And this got circulated by that individual sending this fake audio clip of AI generated vocals of this principal saying these malicious things. They sent it out to several teachers, and that teacher sent it out to a student, which publicized this all over social media. And then you had that principal get put on leave and investigated, only to find out that it was this other coworker of his that was disgruntled that actually came after him, faked these vocals to try to get this guy fired. And now, even though this was all cleared up, the person that created AI vocals, the coworker, he got arrested. But this person, the principal, is still feeling the aftermath of this fake situation, of this fake audio clip that was circulated, because people are still looking at him like he did something wrong, and he still is not able to go back to work, which is kind of bullshit. And this just goes to show you that anybody can just take one little sentence, clone their voice, have you say something, and it become a problem. And we also seen this with people faking kidnappings, right? They'll clone their voice, and then they'll have you call somebody, and they'll replay your voice, or have a voice filter, and they'll talk to somebody, or they'll play the clip, and they'll answer questions of your family, trying to figure out where you're at. And all of a sudden they send them money and stuff because they think it's real, because they hear your voice and you reply, but it's not really you. That's the problem with this shit. And this is exactly why politicians need to get off their fucking ass and start doing something about this. Now, mind you, I do remixes, right? And I love doing remixes because remixing, I think, can show new life to these records and these artists. Like, I feel like I've done amazing things for Tupac's catalog and his legacy, and other artists like Method Man putting out remixes of these artists and showcasing these lyrics and these songs and these catalogs, the back catalog of these artists to newer generations that otherwise probably would not have come across these artists. Now you can say, oh, Tupac is so big, Ice Cube is so big, Eminem's so big, everyone. No, that's not the case. You may have people that are just fans of certain types of music and certain type of artists, and they may not give a chance to certain other artists, and it comes through one song that they may hear on YouTube or whatever, and then you actually go back to their back catalog and start listening to all their albums because you just love that one song. You want to find more just like that. That's the beauty of remixing, right? And you can take something old and make it fresh and make it hot, and it boosts up the catalog, it boosts up the notoriety of that artist. So when people want to come at me for remixing, just look at all the shit I'm doing to help these artists get more attention. That's just what it is. But the thing that's different about what I do and what people may do with AI vocals and stuff like that is I always do it in the most respectful and positive manner possible. I don't go in there and try to make somebody say something that they did not say, take a political stance that they never took, right? And that's the problem with AI, right? The pen game is not there. The pen game is someone else's pen game with AI. Whereas remixing, I'm still using their verses, right? I'm still having a theme similar to what they were rapping, right? I may put different artists together, but the verses are mostly intact. I may cut up some vocals from different tracks or the same track and make a custom hook, right? But that's still their lyrics. That was still their viewpoint. Where AI is, you're having somebody just write and take a stance, show the viewpoints of that person as opposed to the real person that they're mimicking. So to me, that's where AI is a problem. Now, was there any way that the Tupac estate could forcibly take down the music of Drake? Probably not, because on one hand, the laws are not up to date with this, right? You don't have laws that are saying you can't use AI voice, you can't fake someone's voice, which I understand, because you can't copyright a voice. Because if you have someone that does impressions and they sound almost just like someone else, or you just have someone that's naturally sounding almost similar, like The Rock, Dwayne The Rock Johnson. If you close your eyes and you listen to Dwayne The Rock Johnson, you might hear Barack Obama. If you hear Barack Obama, you might hear Dwayne The Rock Johnson. Their voices are not the same, but they sound a little bit like each other. So if you have a copyright over a voice, you may have problems with other people that sound like you, and you may have people that try to, use the law to their advantage against other people that sound like them. That's where things become really messy. So I understand that that's why you can't copyright voices. But in this regard, it's kind of like plagiarism, because you are taking somebody's voice, you're taking their style, you're taking their fan base, and then you're making them say what you want them to say, which is not their viewpoints, and maybe they're not even here to give you approval. And that's where the problem is, because you are promoting that as them, and it's not really them. I've seen videos from Curtis King, I've seen videos from Diverse Mentality, Quake, great videos. I'm going to have that in the comment or the description of this video. You guys can go check them out. They break down the whole beef and everything else regarding the takedowns and whatever. So my thoughts on whether or not this should be done, right? Should entities get involved and make a stance against AI, which is, I think, is coming, right? It's just we haven't seen anything happen to the masses yet that affects them on the level where people are so confused. Hip hop is just a small little fraction of, what's going on in the world. If we see it from a political standpoint, I think we'll see more people say, hey, we need to take action against this. And what's really crazy is that Drake did all this, right? He had Tupac's voice cloned, and obviously the estate, they said you had 24 hours to take this down, and we would like to know how you made this filter or this AI technology. What did you use? What's the data? And obviously, come on, let's be real. He used acapellas from 94, 95, 96. He don't need master reels. He don't need approval from Death Row Records, like, Snoop Dogg and shit like that. He don't need none of that. You just go online, you download vocals from any song. If I want a Tupac song, Still Ballin'. If I want to sound like Fuck 'Em All, I use Fuck 'Em All, right? So if I wanted to sound like 93 Tupac, I'll use something from Are You Still Down, the Thug Life album. And you can just type in whatever song, acapella, you have the vocals right there. And if you don't have the vocals, you can take it through an AI filter and they will filter out the beat. And there you go. You had the vocals from that track artificially. Even though a studio acapella where it's just their voice that's actually from the master reel will work a lot better because it'll be a lot clearer. You can obviously tell this not from an interview or nothing like that. He got it from a track, maybe multiple tracks used as reference files. Most likely it was Still Ballin', This Life I Lead, Fuck 'Em All, Hit 'Em Up. I don't know if it might have been Hit 'Em Up because Hit 'Em Up had a more of like aggressive tone. Fuck 'Em All had a more of aggressive tone. Could have been All Eyes on Me. Could have been How Do You Want It. These acapellas can be found online. There's some master reels found online and digital files that you can find from Let's Get It On, right? Only Move for the Money. That track has many different titles, but because it's not released yet. You can find like all these layers that you can craft an AI filter around. We've seen this on websites and stuff. Many websites have all these artists that are already generated. Tupac is on there. The problem is, to me, it don't really sound like Tupac because Tupac is the hardest artist for anybody to duplicate because his voice used doubles, triple vocals, ad-libs in there, and his voice had so much passion, and for whatever reason, even D.O.P. Funk has problems mimicking that passion, right? He makes great AI Tupac music that sounds great, and you listen to it and you're like, oh wow, that's what Tupac might sound like today, but it's still lacking that charisma. It's still lacking that individual personality. I can't just put the right words on it. It's just something that's just missing. The soul is just missing from the vocals. And even with Drake doing the AI verse for Tupac, right? It didn't sound exactly like Tupac, and it was missing that soul. And Drake's flow and lyrics, and this is not a diss to Drake. It's not up to par and caliber to what Tupac would have did for like Against All Odds and Bomb First and Watch Your Mouth and Hit 'Em Up. The flow is not any type of flow that Tupac ever used, right? So it's not passable to me. It don't sound like Tupac, especially from the voice tone and the flow. But the lyrics are very, I would say, basic. You can take that as you want. Compared to Tupac, people want to say Tupac wasn't a great lyricist. Go listen to If I Die Night. Go listen to Street Fame. Go listen to Days of a Criminal with a young 20-year-old Tupac. Go listen to those tracks. Revenge of the Lunatic. Come on. These are all great lyrical tracks. And there's not many rappers today that can duplicate what Tupac did on Street Fame with Troublesome 96 and doing all the P words in the song If I Die Tonight, starting out every verse like that. So to say Tupac wasn't lyrical, that's just bullshit. But when you compare Drake's bars to Tupac, it doesn't hold up because it doesn't sound nothing like Tupac lyrically, voice tone wise, flow wise. But this is where you get into the whole parody situation. Oh, well, if it don't really sound like Tupac, it's more a parody. But the problem is he still used clippings from copyrighted material. So this is where the law gets kind of, I don't want to say misconstrued, but the law is kind of blurred. It's grayed out because on one hand, AI voices or voice in that matter is not copyrighted and trademarked. But at the same time, you got to use reference files that are legally owned by a company, a record label, or an artist. So if I'm doing a podcast and I want to sound like Joe Rogan or Joe Budden, I may use clippings of their interview or their podcast, right? They will own that podcast. Now, if I want to sound like somebody, like a natural speaker, but they don't do a podcast, I may do a random interview that they do for MTV or VH1 or BET or Entertainment Tonight, and I'll go and I clip it in and I make an AI voice using that. The record label, if they're a musician, and I get the vocal sample from an interview, the record label won't have no legal rights over it. So that's a loophole, right? Because if I do an interview clipping of Tupac from Gang Related or Gridlock, Universal, Interscope, the Tupac estate doesn't own that. The movie production company owns that. That'll be the difference. So then the movie production company would have to get involved. And sometimes with interviews, the legal rights are so, I want to say, hidden unless it's on a major platform on YouTube or whatever, right? You may have some of these older interviews that you don't even know who even owns the interview or who's even doing the interviewing. Those are legal loopholes, but most often or not, if you want a real clear vocal quality version that sounds passable for like Tupac and DMX and Biggie, you're going to go to the direct source of their actual material, their songs. And these songs are owned usually by the main label that they're signed to or whatever guest feature that they were doing at the time. So if I do a song that's like Tupac and MC Breed, it might be owned by Warner Music Group instead of Universal Music Group. You get what I'm saying? Whereas the direct catalog of Tupac, Are You Still Down, Tupac Now is going to be owned by Universal Interscope. So in that regard, if those songs were used to make the AI filter, definitely the record label, the Tupac estate, has rights there. They may not have rights over the actual voice tone. They may not have voice rights, but they have the data rights that whoever was making these AIs used. So you use Ghetto Gospel, you use Nothing to Lose, you use Hit 'Em Up, you use Machiavelli, any type of song on Machiavelli, you use that to create and generate the AI voice. That's a legal copyright. So right there, you could use that in court. Now, would that still be enough? I think so. But the other thing is, you're also having these people make these songs and their lyrics are nothing from that artist. Isn't that a form of defamation, right? If I'm going to go out there and I'm going to say that you said something, that's defamation. If I'm going to talk trash on you, that's slander. Now, in this regard, you're using somebody to talk trash about somebody else. Whether it wasn't like a big direct shot or not, he's still using Tupac as a vehicle. Even though he didn't promote this and even though he didn't release it to streaming platforms, he still put it out there. You can still monetize Instagram and X and Twitter, whatever. Those are still monetizable. You're still bringing in fans. You're still bringing people eyes on your product and your profiles. That's a profitable gain, right? So if you're having the song on there and you're having the voice on there, you're still bringing in those fans. You can make the case that he profited off of it. And in this situation of using lyrics that's not actually from the artist, that could be slander. That could be defamation of sorts because that is not their viewpoint. If you have AI take a stance of a political standpoint that a dead musician or celebrity did not take, you're putting words in their mouth and you're misleading people. So there has to be some type of law that's already in place that is under that. And me, that's slander, that's defamation, as I was just saying. Because you're slandering the image, the name, the likeness of Tupac Shakur by putting words in his mouth and stuff that he did not say. So do I think the Tupac estate could have found a way to forcibly take Drake to court and win? Yes, because Drake put his own spin on what he thought Tupac would say, and he disparaged Kendrick Lamar using Tupac's voice, which is copyrighted by Universal and Interscope by the songs that he used the data from. Anyways, guys, that's just my viewpoint. Do I think it was right for Drake to do this? No. Do I think it was creative? Yes, because in a way, to have a diss record and you're doing from the viewpoint from other artists was creative. I think it was kind of messy doing it from like Snoop Dogg because Snoop Dogg is still alive. Why wouldn't you just call him up? You obviously know that Snoop Dogg will not hop on the diss track with you in regard to Kendrick Lamar. So why would you even do that where Snoop Dogg could sue you then, right? But Snoop Dogg's so laid back, he don't give a fuck. So the main reason why I said that this is very creative in a way, I know I might get flamed for saying that, but it actually is, because when you look at the history of Kendrick Lamar and the West Coast and Tupac, it's very much like as if Tupac was passing the torch to Kendrick Lamar, even though physically Tupac was never here during Kendrick Lamar's rise around the late 2000s. So when you look at the West Coast, obviously you think of NWA, you think of Ice Cube, you think of Dr. Dre, then you think of Tupac taking over around 95, 96, even though he wasn't a West Coast born rapper, he's very much a figurehead, probably the most known West Coast figurehead of all time. After Tupac's demise, obviously Ice Cube came back out and had many massive hits afterward. And then in the 2000s, it kind of shifted towards the game of G-Unit. And by the time 2008, 2009, 2010 rolled around, it was shifting more towards Kendrick Lamar and his rise on the rap game. Obviously, you can throw in YG and Nipsey Hussle. However, I don't think YG and Nipsey Hussle had a great impact on hip-hop on the scale of Kendrick Lamar on the mainstream appeal. Then you also got to tie in how Kendrick Lamar featured Tupac on his Pimp the Butterfly album on the song Mortal Man, where it was an unreleased rare interview that Tupac did with some guy, I forget whoever was conducting the interview, but it wasn't leaked in full at that time, only bits and pieces. So he was able to take that interview clip, insert himself as if he was talking to Tupac. And that was really to show Tupac's viewpoints on oppression and police brutality and everything that was going on at the time. He also tied that into Kendrick Lamar admitting that he was having Tupac come to him in dreams and giving him messages. So you can see why Drake used this as a vehicle for his second round of dissing towards Kendrick Lamar, especially when he did not even get a reply from him the first time. It seems like it was more a style of trolling, modern type of sense in terms of hip hop. You know, I'm going to use your icon against you, your mentor against you, and try to get you to respond. So in that way, it's very much creative. However, it's disrespectful as Drake did not know Tupac. He's using Tupac to say things that Tupac probably will not say himself, as well as Snoop Dogg. I do think it was a bit disrespectful, but it was not a proper release on Spotify and things like that. So I took it more as like a joke, but I could understand the ramifications from like an artist standpoint, from a estate standpoint, and a record label. Like last year, we had Universal come out and say, hey, we want TikTok to take a bigger stance on these AI generated tracks. We want YouTube to take a bigger stance and remove this stuff. We had those fake Drake tracks by the ghostwriter with The Weeknd, right? And that took the world by storm for a little bit, for a couple of weeks, right? And people were talking about how great they were and how they wish Drake sounded like that again, right? And you had Universal go after those songs and remove it because that person behind those tracks was actually putting on Spotify. And then you had people, even though it's removed, you had other people re-upload them to YouTube. It just became a big mess because once you put it on YouTube and stuff like that, it's always going to be out there because people are just going to be re-uploaded. You wonder, okay, how was Universal able to do this if there's no patent or copyright over voice? That's because he used the Metro Boomin tag in the intro, which is copyrighted, right? That was their legal loophole to take the music down. But they made a strong case and a strong stance saying, hey, we're against this type of technology. Now, I think in the future, record labels probably will use AI technology and weed out the artists because the artists are like a middleman, right? If you have AI do the voice, you can have AI do lyrics, or maybe you just pay a songwriter and you pay someone to do reference files and you have your own AI generated voice be your artist. You won't have much need for an artist, a physical artist, unless you're doing touring and stuff. And then in the future, the label will have more rights over that music, right? They'll own the music forever because they are the artists, and they won't have to pay the artist because they are the artists, right? Do you understand? That's coming. There's no way to stop that. For now, we're seeing Universal and these record labels on the good side, right? Until they flip, right? So I get it from that standpoint, but then you're going to have your own artists from Universal come out and make an AI track. Now, the problem with like Drake doing it, you have Universal take that stance, then you had Drake come out and Drake is like, here's this track, even though I'm not going to name it as Tupac and Snoop on here, I'm just going to put it on Instagram. People can obviously tell who it is, right? You still had your biggest artist do that. So what does that say? That says maybe Universal didn't know Drake was going to do all this, right? Otherwise, they would have probably stopped it because that goes against their whole narrative of being against AI tracks. Unless you can argue, hey, maybe this was a joint effort because publicity brings in money, right? They want this hip hop beef to go off the scale, right? They want more and more disses against one another because they want that money. They want that attention. Everyone's talking about it. Everyone's clicking on the links. Everyone's playing the songs. It's more money for them. More money for the artists. More money for the label. So who knows at this given moment whose side is the record label actually on and whether they knew or not. But to me, it's kind of a bad luck. You have one of the biggest artists in the world use AI, and that will like show everybody, okay, maybe I can use AI too. I can sound like Drake. I can sound like Kendrick Lamar. I can put my song out. We've seen more Kendrick Lamar responses from the AI after this whole ordeal too. And then those songs go viral, and the people that were behind the AI that did the rapping, now they're getting subscribers and attention and stuff and making a name for themselves. We're going to see more and more people do this because of what Drake did, because Drake put it out there more on a massive scale. And this is going to have more of a negative effect on everything because Drake is so big and so known. now anybody's going to think they can just make a song and reskin it and transform it into someone else's voice and have a hit record. So that's where the problem is. You're going to have leeches, you're going to have moochers, and this is why the laws have to catch up, because you got to make it fair for the artist. If I'm an artist and I have a unique voice, but now everyone can just mimic my voice with AI or sound like more like my voice, that takes away from my uniqueness. And it may be harder for me to actually generate sales and, be successful in the long run. And it's actually a great thing that the Tupac estate took this step, whether or not they actually win any type of lawsuit, because we've seen Drake take it down. We don't know the aftermath. Maybe they'll settle behind closed doors. Maybe it was just a warning. We don't really know what's going to happen. Maybe Drake will slide him a check, which seems reasonable, right? Because he did use his likeness. He did not get permission. But I think overall, from a standpoint of seeing it in the public eye, that the Tupac estate stood up for this, whether or not you feel like they stood up for Kendrick Lamar or they just stood up to get money, it doesn't really matter. To have a label or a state to stand up to this AI trend, I think it's going to get more attention on actually doing something about this before it gets out of hand, where everybody's voice is going to be faked in the future. We just needed somebody to get the ball rolling here, because we can't be having me or somebody else clone someone else's voice and sound just like them and then get them in trouble and get them canceled and get them fired. That's not cool. Anyways, guys, thank you for listening. This is just my overall opinion. I know it's a long episode because it's going to go up on Spotify under Tupac Music, Podcast, and Skandalous Talk later on. Be sure to check me out on my main channel, DJ Skandalous. Be sure to check me out on Skandalous Talk for more clips and breakdowns on Tupac. Skandalous music from my old archive of old remixes I did the last 15 years. Check me out on Facebook. I'm always talking. I'm always scandalous on there. I keep it 100. I don't hold back for nobody. You know what it is. Your favorite DJ's favorite DJ signing out. Peace.